Hi, everybody. This is day 5 of Unit 4, the Holocaust. The Holocaust is a big, giant topic. We could spend forever talking about it. Unfortunately, we don't have time to do that. So I have made today's lesson as short as possible, and it is based on the book Why by Peter Hayes. So if you want to know more, that's where you can go. The focus question for today is the question that everybody asks. How could a very civilized and modern nation like Germany commit crazy, horrible genocide? Just to orient yourself, we had talked about in the past the Axis powers, these countries in red, had invaded Poland, had invaded France, had invaded North Africa, and had invaded the Soviet Union. Meanwhile, at this point, Japan had taken over a lot of Southeast Asia and a lot of the Pacific. So that's where we're at. Now to backtrack and answer the question that a lot of people have, which is, where did anti-Semitism come from? Like, the question people ask is, why the Jews? Why Jewish people? Why? Who cares? You be your own religion. Maybe from a present day perspective in the US, that seems like not a very obvious thing. So let's talk about it. Jewish people in history were the very definition of the people who said no to Jesus Christ. So if you go way, way, way back in the year 0, Jesus was like around and supposedly the Son of God, and the Jewish people were the ones who said, no, he's not. And the Christians were the ones that said, yes, he is. So historically, Christians and Jews kind of disagree on the fundamental nature of who God even is. Fast forward a couple hundred years to the Middle Ages in Europe. In the Middle Ages, Christian empires, Christian kingdoms, places like Germany and places like England and places like France, they created anti-Semitic laws, meaning anti-Jewish laws. And these laws meant that Jewish people were excluded from certain rights. They were excluded from citizenship, excluded from property ownership, excluded from most professions. And so Jewish people in those countries were forced to gravitate towards a few professions. Education was one thing that they were allowed to obtain in their own communities. And secondly, money lending and stuff to do with finance. So money lending, money changing. You can see over here this guy looking at a coin. Money lending, money changing is a thing you can do without owning any property and without any citizenship rights. Also, at this time, Christians believed it was a sin to charge interest, so Jews were the only ones who could make banking profitable. At the same time, Jewish people had no rights. Like I said, they weren't often not citizens or members of the country properly, and they were forced to live in a special part of town called a ghetto. So all of the major Christian cities of Europe had Jewish ghettos. We know what a ghetto is in the US context. In the medieval context, a ghetto is simply a poor part of town, usually a slum, that contains a minority group, so Jews in this case. Then we get to the 1750s and the 1800s, and there's a time period called emancipation or liberation, where European monarchs, kings and queens, freed the Jews and made them citizens, largely so that they could be taxed. But either way, Jewish people were freed from living in ghettos, and they were freed from restrictions on professions and stuff like that. And so very quickly, Jewish people started to prosper. Instead of being forced to live in ghettos and segregated, here's the then. This is a horrible cartoon, but it illustrates what happened. This is the then, Jewish people as, poor and on the margins, to now in the 1800s when they were wealthy and prosperous and own property and enter every profession. This leads to the same kind of discrimination that we see in other countries where minority groups are emancipated and suddenly are entering professions and competing with the majority population. They're taking our jobs is a complaint that people in Germany or France or Russia or any of these places would say about Jewish people. They, the Jews, are taking the Christians' jobs. We hear this today a lot in Europe with refugees, migrants. We hear this a lot in the US with immigrants and stuff like that, stealing our jobs. Think that same category of thing, but it's Jewish people. All right, so now we're in the 1900s, now we're in the 20th century, and we still have this residual sort of racist feeling from all the way back here. I promise I'll get to the end here in just a second. Racist feelings from the Middle Ages, racist feelings from the 18th century, the 19th century, and now here we are in the 20th century, and phrenology, the science of the shape of your head and like the shape of your skull and the shape of your face, alleges that your character and your morality and your intelligence can be determined by the shape of your head and the shape of your face. So much like pseudoscience earlier that tried to say African people were less intelligent than European people because of the shape of their skull, think about that thing, but transfer it to a slightly more sophisticated but also pseudoscientific pretend science, fake science of phrenology. And so they take things like the geometry of the shape of your forehead and they say, well, this person versus this person, look at their head, it's shaped different, your brain is inside there, so clearly something's different. This person's eyes are squinty, this person's eyes are open, this person's nose is this way, this person's nose is this way. Therefore, we can predict that if your eyes look like this and your nose looks like this, you are a deceitful, dishonest person. If your eyes look like this and your nose looks like this, you are a sincere, honest person. All of this is fake and pretend and not real, but it did lead people to feel like their racist feelings were justified. And so cartoon images of Jewish people like this one here are the result of 500 years of stereotypes, segregation, fear, racism, and then pseudoscience used to justify discrimination. All right. That's not a very satisfying answer because I had to smush 500 years into a couple minutes, but it's the best I can do. All right, next question then people ask is, okay, if so we know kind of why the Jews, then now the question is why Germany? Why was Germany the country to carry out the Holocaust? There were far more racist countries. There were far more anti-Semitic countries. The British and the French historically have been more racist than the Germans. The Russians have been more anti-Jewish than the Germans. So why Germany? The answer is in this picture here. Germany lost World War I, and a lot of the soldiers and the civilians didn't really know why. It seemed like they were winning. They were almost going to win, and then all of a sudden they lost. Some of this was due to propaganda, where the government was telling people they were winning to try to keep their spirits up, and then all of a sudden they lost. One soldier in particular, Adolf Hitler, thought he was in the German military. He thought they were winning, and then he got in a gas attack, and he was blinded, and he was in the hospital. And then when he came out of the hospital, they had lost the war. What happened? It seemed like it came out of nowhere. So the Nazis, Hitler, came up with this lie, myth, just lie, that the Jews were back in Germany and they somehow sabotaged the war and they stabbed Germany in the back. They were the enemy among the Germans and they stabbed us in the back while we weren't looking. And I'm guessing this is supposed to be a woman. I don't know, but we got the star on the hat, so we know it's a Jewish person. The Jews stabbed the Germans in the back, and the Jews are the reason why Germany lost the war. It felt like German people wanted to blame somebody. It felt like they'd been betrayed, and the easiest scapegoat, the easiest person to blame was the Jews. Similar to how the Ottomans blamed the Armenians for their loss in World War I, Germany is going to blame the Jews for their loss in World War I. Also, on top of that, the USA was doing a eugenics kind of thing at the same time. So it's like fake genetics. And this chart here is used in Germany, but it was a copy of charts just like it in the US. In the US, this determined if you were black or white. In Germany, it determines if you're Jewish or Christian. What this does is it conflates religion with DNA. And so you're like, no longer is Judaism a religion. Now it is a race. It is biological. It is genetic. So here, these are supposed to be like family trees. So like if all 4 of your grandparents are Jewish, then you are Jewish. If 3 of your grandparents are Jewish, then you are Jewish. If 2 of your grandparents are Jewish, you are like mixed race. but it's still bad. If one of your grandparents is Jewish, you're mixed race, but still Jewish. Whereas the only way to be not Jewish is to have all of your grandparents be not Jewish, to be Christian. This is part of the Nuremberg laws, and it starts to make legal distinctions between who is Jewish and who isn't. And this starts years and years and years and years before the Holocaust, so that everybody is classified well in advance of when the Holocaust actually begins. Why was Germany the country to carry out the Holocaust? They copied the US racist eugenics policy, and they had the stab in the back myth. No, let me skip that. If you want to read the book, you can read it later on your own time. All right, this brings us to question number 3. Why murder? Why murder the Jews? Why not deport them? Why not put them in jail? Why not enslave them? The U.S. enslaved Amerindians. The U.S. enslaved African Americans or Africans or all manner of people. Why murder the Jews? And the short answer is, they tried a bunch of things and they ended up as murder for the final solution. So at first, Jewish people were deported, but of course a bunch of them were German citizens. They can't be deported. So then you make their life miserable until they leave voluntarily. But this boat here is a picture of some Jewish people leaving voluntarily, and then as refugees, no other country would take them. This famous ship left Germany, went to the U.S., got to New York, and the New York Immigration Service said, no, you can't come in. We can't take any more refugees. We're full. They went down to Cuba, tried the same thing. Cuba said, no, we're full. Boats like this left Germany, went to other countries, and the other countries said, no, we can't take any more refugees. They were sent back to Germany, and many of them eventually perished in the Holocaust. So deportation didn't work because other countries didn't want Jewish people either. The Depression is happening. Other countries kind of have the attitude of, look, it's not our problem. We have our own people to deal with. You got to deal with your own people. So after deportation or emigration didn't work, we moved to imprisonment of the first type. Revive the ghettos. Remember the ghettos from the Middle Ages? Build them again and put all the Jewish people in each town in the slum area and build a wall around it. Here's the wall. Here's some barbed wire. This is a ghetto. You put all the Jewish people in there and you basically wait for them to starve to death. However, that wasn't going fast enough. If you really, really believe the stab in the back myth and you are the Nazis and you really believe that the reason why you lost World War I is because Jewish people somehow sabotaged your victory from the inside, then what happens about halfway through the war is that Germany starts losing. The Nazis invade the Soviet Union, the Battle of Stalingrad, and all of those events are happening, and Germany starts to lose. So it feels like to many Nazi commanders that the reason we're losing is because Jewish people are sabotaging us again. So round up the people from these ghettos and send them to concentration camps. So from sort of mildly concentrated in cities, concentrate them even more into specialized camps. That's what's going on here. And then Germany keeps losing. So then you round up people even more from the ghettos and the camps, and you bring them to the death camps. And this is the final solution after they've tried many other solutions. You can see on this map a couple of things. Number one, these yellow stars are ghettos, so there are a lot of them, and they're all over Eastern Europe. Then the black squares are concentration camps, and you can see there's quite a few of those. And then the skull in the black square are extermination camps. So there's many fewer of those. Basically, each time you transport people, you have fewer people to deal with. But the death camps are the final solution. So the question of why murder, well, it's where they ended up in the end. Skipping that. Fourth question, why didn't Jewish people fight back more often? Adults, often older white men, ask this to me a lot. Students don't usually ask it, but I should answer it anyways. Jews were a persecuted minority. They were discriminated against. They were treated badly for years before the Holocaust. Imagine a country with a minority group that is hassled by the police and the people all the time. And then now the Nazis, which are sort of scarier than regular police, tell Jewish people, put your hands on the wall. If you were a member of a persecuted minority, do you confront the police or do you do what they say? If you confront the police, we see this even today. If you confront the police, you're going to get shot. You got to just follow directions. Following directions seems like the best way to survive. So Jewish people mostly comply. Jewish shop owners aren't going to go out and confront Nazis who put signs on their windows because it's a sure way to get shot or arrested. If you just comply, if you just keep your head down, if you just kind of follow the rules, maybe, just maybe, you'll survive. However, there were some Jewish people who did fight back. This group of teenagers here in the Warsaw Ghetto managed to steal weapons and fight back. Eventually, they did all get killed, but they did manage to make a pretty good resistance of it. So the question is, why didn't they fight back more often? And the answer is they had no power. They're the victims here. And so you can't really blame the victims for their own victimhood. Last question. Why didn't the Allies bomb the death camps? Like, why didn't we do something about Auschwitz? Why didn't we, the Allies, the US, the British, the Australians, the Canadians, why didn't we do something about this? There's a couple of reasons. Number one, we didn't know for sure that the death camps were death camps until pretty late in the war, like 1944. Before that, we knew there were concentration camps, but you're not going to bomb a concentration camp because usually the camp is going to contain innocent prisoners. You don't want to hurt innocent people. Secondly, until very late in the war, the closest air approach would have been from Great Britain, from the UK here. To get over here, the death camps are here in red. So flying all the way over here to, say, Auschwitz and back, not possible on a single tank of gas. There were no airplanes in the world that could do that at that point. So it would have been a suicide mission. Lastly, if we went and bombed the death camp and you're flying over the top, this is a picture of Birkenau, but if you're flying over the top of it in your airplane, what part of the camp do you bomb? You don't necessarily know what any of these buildings are. So which one of these buildings is the gas chambers? Well, it turns out it's here, 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 and somewhere else that I can't even see. Do you bomb the barracks? But are these barracks for Jewish people or for Nazi soldiers? Are these for Jewish people or Nazi soldiers? It's really hard to know. Do you blow up the train tracks? Okay, but they would just use trucks. Do you blow up the fence so that the prisoners can escape? But the prisoners by this point are so weak, they're not going to escape. They're not going to go anywhere. Also, where are they supposed to go? Out into Nazi Germany? Like, not a lot of chances there. So it was a far better strategy to just try to liberate the camps rather than to bomb them. Like, fight your way, which is what we eventually did in 1945, fighting our way onto the beaches of Normandy and then through Germany and then over to the camps, liberate the prisoners and get them medical attention as best we could. All right, those are the questions for today. I hope this whirlwind tour through the Holocaust was informative.